floor is yours.
Oh, good evening, everyone. We left last Tuesday and we adjourned the meeting till this evening. But I'd like to welcome everyone back at this time. I would like to ask for a roll call.
Mayor Bennett,
Here.
Vice Mayor Parton,
Here.
Councilor Randolph,
Here.
Councilor Holloway,
Here.
Councilor Gore,
Here.
Councilor Denton,
Here.
Councilor Pelham.
Here.
You have 7 present, 0 absent, Mayor Bennett.
Thank you. So at this time, I would like to ask if there's a motion to go into closed session.
I move that we go into closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711 A7 and 8 to consult with the city attorney regarding specific legal matters and actual litigation requiring the provision of legal advice, and where such consultation in open meeting would adversely affect the city's interest in A4 for the protection of the privacy of
I
individuals.
would like to ask if there's a motion to go into closed session.
I move that we go into public business.
Whoa.
Patience, he's doing that.
I'm trying to get back into my screen.
I think that's a recording.
I hit the wrong button, some about Yahoo.
Is that Johnny doing the motion?
I tried to get in, I'm trying to get into us back into the screen. And I hit something that said Yahoo, and it was behind our actual meeting. Can you hear me? I might be out of this thing.
Oh, it was just a recording.
You're in, Miss Pelham. We can hear you.
You can hear me now.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Before somebody second motion, I have.
Okay, the motion was made by Vice Mayor Parton, seconded by Councilor Denton.
And I have a
Motion
question.
for discussion. Councilor Pelham.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I got calls from a few citizens who would like to know, last time when we advertised, we said we would come back out for an open meeting. If that happens again tonight, can Madam Attorney tell us, can we just go back out and say that the closed session is lasting longer than we anticipate? And when we might anticipate going back into open session? Because some people waited actually to 9:30 and or beyond or whatever, and they just got tired of waiting, some of them. I don't know how we can do that if we stay longer than what we say the public meeting would be.
Yeah, but if it was advertised that you were going to go into closed session and that was the first item on your agenda, they're just in the uncomfortable position of having to wait until you're done, because there's no way for you to know in advance when you're going to conclude that. Now, if there was some business that you could have taken up at a specific time and then gone back in to resume your closed meeting discussion, that seems that would have been appropriate. But since there was really one item on the agenda and the closed session was related in some respects to that, you could just simply give them an update and let them decide whether it's worth it to continue to
Right.
wait. If you
Well, that's what I'm asking. Can we give then an update to say that this is taking longer than we anticipated? If you'd like to wait, you can, but we can't quite tell you what time we'll be back, if that's agreeable to the council.
Well, I mean, I think what would have to do, I'd have to figure out, and I'm just addressing that like in the first instance, as you're asking it, whether or not you stop the closed meeting and come out of it for that purpose, or whether maybe one person leaving the meeting to make that announcement would be sufficient. I think the latter is probably okay.
Yeah.
But I would feel more comfortable spending a little bit more time with it to answer it succinctly or with more conviction than I'm doing right now.
Okay, just food for thought. Thank you.
I don't see any more hands. Roll call, Ms. Bess.
Vice Mayor Parton,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Denton,
Yes.
Counselor Palom,
Yes.
Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Counselor Randolph,
Yes.
Counselor Holloway, Counselor Holloway,
I don't see Ms. Holloway's phone up there anymore.
I don't see her either. So Mayor Bennett, you have 6 yes and 1 no answer.
Okay. I will meet everyone in closed session, Mr. Altman, and also the city attorney and Mr. Dane, if I do see him here. Okay, see y'all back in the room.
In the room.
Hi, Counselor Pelham.
Hey,
I don't think I've introduced myself to you, and I must apologize for that.
was that? I met you, didn't I?
Did you meet briefly? We did, didn't we?
I think we're live, aren't we?
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking of Counselor Gore. I haven't met her.
Yeah, we haven't met.
How are you, Counselor
How do I
Gore?
get this on full screen? Take it off.
So it looks like we do have a 2, 3, 4.
full screen. How do we do?
Everyone's here. Full screen, Ms. Pelham, go to your 3 dots.
That's what I went to. I see participants that used to come under there. God dang it. Ah. That's not it.
Okay. Everyone's here. Is there a motion to come out of closed session?
I move that we come out of closed session.
Second.
The motion's been made by Vice Mayor Parton to come out of closed session, second by Counselor Pelham. Discussion? I don't see any hands. Ms. Best, roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Pardon,
Here, or excuse me, yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Denton, Counselor Denton,
I was muted, yes.
thank you. Counselor Pelham, Counselor Pelham, you're muted.
Me. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Counselor Randolph,
Yes.
Counselor Holloway.
Yes.
Mayor Bennett, you have 7-0.
Thank you. Can you certify, please?
Yes.
Certification?
Certification pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3712D, were only public business matters, 1, lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements, and 2, identified in the closed meeting motion discussed in closed meeting.
Roll call.
Vice Mayor Pardon,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Denton,
Yes.
Counselor Pelham,
Yes.
Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Counselor Randolph,
Yes.
Counselor Holloway.
Yes.
Mayor Bennett, you have 7-0.
Okay. Counselor Denton, you have your hand up.
Yes, I would like to make a motion that council approve the tax rebate development incentive agreement and the donation agreement, and have the city manager sign the necessary paperwork.
Second.
Motion has been made by Counselor Denton, seconded by Counselor Randolph. I see, so for discussion, I see one hand, Counselor Pelham. Your mic is muted, Counselor Pelham.
Okay. Can I make a substitute motion? Do I have to get
No one
permission?
opposed.
Oh,
Has to get permission, doesn't she?
Ms. Robinson?
Yes, once it's put to the body for discussion, there has to be an agreement or get permission from the body.
Okay. There is a motion to make a substitute motion. Ms. Bess, will you please call roll? And this is for council to agree that Counselor Pelham can make a substitute motion.
Okay. Vice Mayor Pardon,
No.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Denton,
No.
Counselor Pelham. Does Counselor Pelham get to vote if she made the
Yes.
substitute motion?
Yes.
Ma'am.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Counselor Randolph,
No.
Counselor Holloway.
Yes.
Mayor Bennett, you have 4 yes and 3 no, so the motion passes.
Okay. Counselor Pelham, you are open to make your substitute motion.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Oh,
Wow.
Is that even a substitute?
yeah.
Miss Robinson,
It is. It is.
It doesn't have, no one has to second it or die.
motion has not been seconded. Okay, we are back to Counselor Denton's motion and actually discussion time. So I do see Vice Mayor Parton, you have your hand raised.
Yes.
And then Counselor Gore.
Thank you, Mayor Bennett. My first question is for Mr. Bowman. Can you tell me what is going to be the impact on this project if these rebate and donation agreements are not granted?
Is that a legal discussion for a motion?
Are you asking for a point of information?
Information, yes, ma'am.
Counselor Randolph?
Yes, is that a
Robinson, can you please answer Counselor Randolph's question?
She said all the necessary paperwork. No motion.
Well, the question is he speaking to the motion, which is just to approve those specific
Right.
agreements? And
he's asking a guest question. I wasn't sure we were supposed to be asking questions at this point, but just I'm not understanding.
well, the challenge is twofold because
Yes, ma'am.
the question that was originally posed is whether or not he's speaking to the motion, but there's the secondary question as to whether or not your rules permit questions to someone who hasn't presented during the course of your discussion, and I don't think the rules do support that. So we're not in a posture where that particular exchange can come. But if he said, I need a point of information in order to
Right.
vote, and he asked that question in general, maybe to someone in the
Right.
body or
Right.
to
staff,
then that answer
would be allowable. Yes, ma'am. I understand that. Okay, that's kind of the understanding I had. I just was confused. So yeah,
That's fine. I'll ask the point of information.
yes. Thank you.
and it would be to staff or someone on council.
Okay, to staff. What will be the impact on this project if this rebate is not granted tonight?
Can you specifically specify who you're asking the question to?
Sure, Mr. Altman or Mr. Dane.
Vice Mayor Parton, if one, I think if these two agreements are not approved tonight, there still is a development agreement standing that would have to be complied with. My understanding is that if the tax rebate development incentive agreement is not moved forward, it will endanger the ability for the developer to acquire housing financing from VH for the project, and may result in a different product potentially being put on the property than we had all hoped and discussed throughout this process over the last 3 years that this has been in discussion.
Okay. So we're talking about, a potentially now new and different project that is now, potentially on the table because of something new that has, just come up. So my next question for staff is, if this rebate's not granted, then when can they start construction? And this is, again, another point of information. When can they actually start construction?
I don't know from a financing perspective. I'm not sure when that would be, when they would have their financing. However, the site plan has been approved, and once they have building permit approval, they could begin construction at any point in time once the building permit the principal building permit has been approved. But I'm not sure how that plays into any financing that they may need to move forward in their ability to secure that financing.
Okay, because we still have an actual standalone agreement right now that is still an enforceable contract. And if they're still talking about, issues with financing, I'm still having, concerns with this.
Well, I can't answer the question because I don't know if they have financing in place for a different product at this point in time. So that's the only hesitancy. Let's assume for a moment, if they do, once that principal building permit is approved, then they can start construction immediately. But if they don't have financing in place, then they'll have to go through the process of securing financing and then still meet the time frame in which to complete the building per the existing development agreement.
Right, which the deadline is still 2.5 years at the initial construction start date of February 28th, 2020, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
It's 2.5 years for completion or for substantial progress, continual substantial progress, I believe is how it's worded.
Ms. Robinson, can you clarify that?
The actual language of the agreement, sir, is if the developer fails to complete phase 1 within 2.5 years, or is failing to make ongoing progress as determined by Hopewell and its reasonable discretion.
Okay. All right, well, I'll save my remaining comments after giving Ms. Gore a chance to talk.
Counselor Gore?
Yes, before I ask my point of information, I do have a point of information. I guess I'll direct to Counselor Randolph and Counselor Denton. Would you mind rescinding the motion for a moment so we can be able to ask questions freely to inform the public of the deal? We haven't talked about the negotiation where we are now in a public session, so it might be helpful for people to understand the terms. You're muted. You're muted.
I'm not, but I didn't make the motion.
Yeah, I don't know. We knew why we were coming to this meeting tonight.
Right, I said the public hasn't had a chance to get updated on the terms of the deal. I'm asking, would you consider taking the motion off the floor temporarily so we can ask questions freely of staff without having to do all these points of information?
I think it's fine to just, I would be hesitant to take a motion off the table for, then we have no idea what's going to come up in place of it.
Okay, well,
I would need to ask the city attorney, what does this place my motion in?
no, it's fine, because it will have to take both of you guys to do it. It's fine. I'll just go ahead and ask my points of information.
I mean, I don't mind, Councilor Gore, but I just want to know what ramifications that would have on my motion.
I've never seen that done, but here is a more procedurally efficient way to deal with it. To move to suspend your rule, I think it's rule 203, but all of those rules that require or put limitations on the number of times you can speak and the order would be appropriate. And then you all can just simply say, as a part of your discussion, it could be a little bit more free flowing, and in probably in line with what you do for work sessions and public hearings. But the suspending the rule 203 seems to be a real good way to deal with the issue without having to make any kind of move with respect to the motion. Because a motion to rescind, as if this was first proposed, would mean to just get rid of it all together. And I don't think that was the intent.
Correct. I just want to be able to ask questions freely so the public can be updated. So if I were to try to go that way, I can make a motion now because I'm not asking for a reconsideration of the motion, correct?
That's right. The motion still is under discussion, so this would not be the appropriate time for a reconsideration.
And I said, was it 302 or 303?
203 is the rule that talks about the limitations on discussion.
All right. I'd like to put a motion on the floor to waive rule 203 so that council can speak about this matter freely and not remove the motion on the floor.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilor Gore, seconded by Vice Mayor Parton. Do I see any hands for discussion? I see 3 hands for discussion. Councilor Gore, Ms. Robinson, and Councilor Denton. Councilor Denton, Councilor Ward, do you have a discussion? Your hand is up.
No, my hand is simply raised to be able to ask my questions after, if and when this passes. If not, then I have points of information.
Okay, Councilor Denton, do you have anything? Your hand is raised.
I'm not understanding. It's real garbly.
Okay. Roll call, Ms. Best.
I could not hear. There was all the whatever was said. I never heard. It was all mixed in. Because
I said I did not have any discussion. I was going to wait to see if and when this passes. The motion on the floor will allow your motion to stay. It will just allow us to be able to talk freely without having to do points of information, to simply ask questions.
okay, can I ask one question? Are we saying absolutely no time limits at all?
Yes, it waives the rule so we can speak freely.
I would like to put a time limit. I don't care. whether it's the 10 minutes, we go back to the 10 minutes, but we could be here all night. And I guess before we do anything else, we've got to make a motion to extend the meeting till we do this. I think we need some time limit.
Madam Chair, the motion's on the floor.
There is a motion on the floor. Roll call.
Vice Mayor Pardon,
Yes.
Councilor Gore,
Yes.
Councilor Denton,
No,
Councilor Pelham,
No.
Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Councilor Randolph, Councilor Randolph,
she's muted.
Councilor Randolph, you're muted. Councilor Holloway,
No.
Councilor Randolph. Okay.
If-
Was that Councilor Randolph? Can someone confirm?
No, her mic is muted.
Okay. So Mayor Pardon.
No,
No. Okay. Thank you.
sorry. It took me forever and I tried 3 times to yell no.
That's okay. Mayor Bennett, you have 4 no, 3 yes. The motion fails.
Thank you.
Madam, do I still have the floor to ask?
You have a, you have your hand up for point of information.
Yep, thank you.
Mhm.
So based off of the motion on the floor, my point of information is to the city manager. In response to Councilor Parton's point of information, you said that one action that could result of not approving this deal if the developers cannot receive financing is that this may result in a different product. Can you explain that to the public, what that may mean? What do you mean by different product?
So if they're not able to secure the financing to build the product that, and the building and the product with the fixtures and finishes that we've been discussing and have been shown in the plans throughout the process, if they can't secure financing to do that, then with whatever financing they can secure, which will be based on the current market of the city. So that market rate that the VH, Virginia Housing, feels that Hopewell's market will bear for rents would result in not the product that we've been talking, because the whole time we've been talking about elevating that number to a higher number than where it is now. And as a result of not getting the same type of financing, the exterior of the building at this point would have to stay the same because they've gone through the downtown design review process, but the interior of the building and the fixtures and finishes in the unit would probably be downgraded. And I'm just speaking, I have not had a conversation with the developer about what they would do, and they have not told me what they would do. I'm just speculating that it would then result in the fixtures and finishes of the units being downgraded to another level, which could result in, if our market will only bear, as an example, what the Freedman Point project gate is, then that would be the type of project that you could expect to be developed on this property. If that is all that VH, Virginia Housing, feels that our market will bear, that will be the level and threshold in which they could lend, VH, Virginia Housing will lend money for the project too. And that's so we would have another similar project to Freedman Point on the property, and potentially for all of those buildings that were proposed as part of the development agreement. And the intent here has always been to elevate the product and elevate the market rate here in the city. That then helps with the next phase of their project and other development and investment in and around the downtown. Does that answer your question, Madam?
Yes, I have a few more. Thank you. Yes, it does.
Okay.
My other point of information is based off of the motion that's on the floor about approving the agreement. Can you please explain before I vote, what are the terms of which agreements we're approving and what are the terms of the agreement? In particular, I'm looking for and with the donation and the rebate, what is the flow of money and deadline so that I can have a better understanding?
So with the donation agreement that you're referencing, if council approves that agreement and authorizes me as the manager to sign, the flow of the donation agreement has the city receiving a donation in January of, and this would be for the way the agreement is structured. Everyone needs to understand years 1 through 10 are handled by our enterprise zone program. So that tax rebate is all handled through our enterprise zone program, and that's what would be the kind of ruling that piece. Then the donation agreement gets into years 11 and 12, to which the donor would make a cash donation to the city of $50,000 each of those years. The remaining years, 13 through the termination of the agreement, the donation to the city would be equal to 100% of the tax paid, and then the rebate made by the EDA back to the developer.
So can you explain this in layman terms?
Layman's terms. Okay, so the developer makes a donation according to the agreement, a cash donation paid by the donor to the city no later than January 1 of each tax year, which is the rebate agreement, when the rebate agreement is still in effect. So January 1, a donation is made. Then taxes are paid in full. Well, not in full, but let's just assume they pay just like everybody else. They pay in halves. So that in June, half taxes are paid. And let's just, for easy math, say taxes are $100. And on January 1, a donation is made to the city of $100. In June, half the taxes are paid to the city, which is $50. In December, the other half, the second half of the tax is paid at $50 for the total of $100 in taxes. And then the EDA would refund or rebate the $100 in taxes paid back to the developer per the donor agreement. But we would have still received the $100 donation in January. So we still have that $100.
So just for clarity, they're paying double the amount of their taxes due so that we can keep the donation and not what we give them in the rebate.
Yes, ma'am. And that's for as long as the agreement is in effect. Yes, ma'am.
All right, I have one last question before I pass it. I do have a few more, but I want to share the time. What happens if the developer, and per this agreement, does not pay the donation and does not pay their taxes?
Then a tax lien would be placed on the property for the amount of the taxes. And then when they went to pay their taxes in the future, the first thing that would have to be settled is the lien on the property.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll yield the floor and I'll ask my other points of information if they haven't been answered before we vote.
Okay, thank you. The next hand I see is Counselor, and I'm just going down the line. Counselor Denton, Counselor Randolph, Vice Mayor Parton, and then Counselor Pelham.
I would just like to make a motion to extend the meeting. Let's say 10:30.
Second. The motion's been made by Counselor Denton to extend the meeting to 10:30, seconded by Mayor Bennett. Any discussion? Ms. Best, can you please call roll? And this is to extend the meeting till 10:30.
Okay, Vice Mayor Parton,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Denton,
Yes.
Counselor Pelham, Counselor Pelham,
She's muted.
No.
Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Counselor Randolph,
Yes.
Counselor Holloway.
Yes.
Mayor Bennett, you have a vote of 6-1. The motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Bess. Okay, Counselor Randolph, and then Vice Mayor Parton, followed by Counselor Pelham.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that I'm in favor of this motion to assist with this developer. I think that being part of economic development in the city prior to coming on to council and being a banker, I certainly understand the issues that we're running into with how convoluted this deal is, and it is, with the city and the different development aspects, including the EDA and several of the Bowman companies. However, in following all the lines of everything and what a good job the city attorney has done for us in the last couple of weeks to change a lot of the agreement language for the rebate and for the donation agreements, and giving us a good, solid legal advice as to what we need or should be doing to make sure it's in the best interest of the city. I feel that most of council has done that. I applaud Councilor Gore for asking her questions tonight so that the citizens could hear more of the deal. I did put something on Facebook before we came on here and kind of oversimplified the deal, but it is in basics the same as what we're talking about here. And I have confidence that our river, and as much emphasis as we're putting on that river with the addition of the river walk and the expansion, that it will be a drawing point to people to live with a view and be on that river. And I have confidence in staff and in the EDA and the Planning Commission that both recommended this deal. And so as such, I will be voting for it. Thank you.
Counselor Vice Mayor Parton, and then Counselor Pelham.
I'd like to make a substitute motion that we charge the city attorney to issue a notice of breach of contract.
Okay, so you would like to make a motion, you want to make a motion to be able to make a substitute motion?
Correct. I got to ask permission.
Okay. So can you restate your motion, please? I mean, not the motion, but are you?
Yeah, I would like to make a substitute motion.
Okay, second. I don't see any hands for discussion. Ms. Bess, this motion, this vote is to make a substitute motion. Can you call a roll, please?
Yes, Vice Mayor Parton,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yeah.
Counselor Denton,
No.
Counselor Pelham,
Yes. Yes.
Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Counselor Randolph,
No.
Counselor Holloway.
Yes.
Mayor Bennett, you have 5 yes, 2 no. The substitute motion passes.
Okay, Vice Mayor Parton, you have the floor.
I got my motion out there. I mean, all it is, just a breach of contract that they had a start construction date of February 28th, 2020. And we are officially 13 months in with no construction have started. So I would like to move that we authorize the city attorney to issue a notice of a breach of contract.
Second.
The motion's been made by Vice Mayor Parton, seconded by Counselor Pelham. The hands that are raised, are they for discussion or have they just been raised?
I raised mine for discussion. I don't know if the other ones are. I can go after whoever's first.
Is anyone, Counselor Randolph, do you have a,
Yes, I have a discussion issue.
okay,
My discussion issue is that I believe that we have talked about this, and while the development deal did not indicate what construction meant or the definition thereof, I think we're walking a slippery slope, because if you want to look at construction of multifamily, they have started construction and they still have time to finish construction. And construction, as we've mentioned a couple of times, does not mean building out of the ground. It entails topography and architectural renderings and such. And again, there was no definition of what construction meant in the original development agreement. So if they were to take us to court, I'm not sure that we would, in my opinion, be able to prevail. And so I wouldn't want us to go that route at this point. Thank you.
thank you, Counselor Randolph. Counselor Denton?
Yes. I have been in real estate for 37 years and have done quite a bit of new construction. And I think we, as Councilor Randolph has stated, would be on a slippery slope, because construction has several meanings. It doesn't mean you see the dirt coming out of the ground. There are many, many aspects to construction. You have to get your drawings, you have to do soil tests. There are many things, many facets before you can actually start digging footing and getting the house or building, whatever, under construction. So my understanding is that they have been working on this right from the get-go. They are ready now. They have secured what they need and they can move forward, but it takes a long time. So I really feel we better think very close about a breach at this point. I'm sorry. I think we'll end up in court, and that's not going to be good. It's not helping our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Denton. Counselor Pelham?
Yes. I think the way we've been talking about a lot of things, but it doesn't mean that we're talking about the right things. And the way when people disagree, that's what courts are made for. And there's no harm in going to court. But most reasonable people, I would say, think that construction means when you dig in some dirt and start leveling it to build a house, for instance. So I do believe the contractors are, in fact, in breach of the contract to start, because initially when we started talking about the breach last year, staff mentioned that Corona came, but you couldn't use coronavirus after, I guess, people realized that the first date that they were supposed to start was February 28th, and Corona wasn't officially announced until a date in March. So that everybody forgot about that conversation. So they themselves, I think, agreed that they didn't start in January, and initially said it was, someone said it was either staff or the developer, not developer, contractor, who said that it was the coronavirus. So I believe there was a breach, and they should be held accountable to explaining and whatever the term is, to remedy that breach. Thank you.
Counselor Gore?
Yes. So I have a couple questions and then a statement. So in general, I have to share that I do agree that initial construction, by most understanding, is breaking ground. I've expressed that to staff, and I've asked questions about why there's different opinions about what initial construction means. So yes, I do think initial construction is breaking ground, and I do understand the reason for asking for a breach. That said, once a breach is done, we have the option, we meaning the city, to initiate the reversion clause. And just for clarity, I will ask the city attorney, can you explain what the reversion is?
Is that speaking to the motion though? Oh, point of order.
The motion on the floor is to send for, charge the city attorney to send for the notice of breach. This is speaking to the motion because if you send out a notice of breach, what are those steps? I feel that that is in line with the motion. If I'm not correct, then Miss Robinson, correct me.
I just want to make, that's why I'm asking.
Okay.
Well, the chair, it comes through the chair. I don't disagree with your ruling, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I believe that it's important to know that the constituents know every step and every vehicle in case, whatever is decided this evening. So, and this, Councilor Gore, you did want to ask the city attorney a question, so please.
Yeah, my first question is, thank you. If we issue a breach, from my understanding, the developer has 30 days to solve the problem, which is known as curing the issue. Then it's up to the city to decide if the issue has been resolved to our satisfaction. If it has not been resolved to our satisfaction, the city has the option to initiate the reversion clause. If I'm correct about that, can you please share what the reversion clause is?
Well, I'll just tell you what the reversion clause is under the agreement. And under the agreement, if there is a right to reversion, the city can demand its property back. It doesn't get the property back for free. It has to purchase the property. And the options for the price are two. And under the agreement, you can either repurchase the price, excuse me, the property in an amount equal to the higher of the purchase price or the assessed value of the land plus the actual cost of improvements made to the portion of the property and actually paid by the developer at the time of the reversion, and provided that those costs for improvements were within a budget that had been approved by the city in writing.
So if the city does not have a budget that was approved in writing, then we're not obligated to pay for any improvements that may be on the property. Since they haven't broken ground yet, there are no improvements on the property. So by default, if we do a breach tonight, we'll be looking at simply the purchase of the land, correct?
Ms. Gore, there is a budget approved. The PUD approved that council approved was a $15.5 million budget.
Okay, but that wasn't the language that I read. So, I mean, someone's skipping over the part of it's the actual cost of the improvements to the property and actually paid by the developer
Right.
at the time of the reversion, and provided that the cost of the improvements were within a budget that was approved by the city in writing. So it's a multi-prong
Mhm.
process for coming up with the purchase price. I just wanted that to be clear because a step was missed.
Correct. But if there are no improvements right now, that's not something of debate for this very moment, correct?
That would be correct under that part of it.
So right now, if we do a breach tonight, there are no improvements. So the only thing that we are talking about really is the purchase of the land, correct?
The purchase price or the assessed value. So it's the
Whichever's higher.
because with the assessed value portion of that, then you add those additional factors to amplify or to increase that number.
Right. But it's about the land. So, right. So if it's about the land, it's the purchase price or the assessed value. We
That's
purchased it at roughly $391,000 purchase price. The appraised value right now by staff is what?
Well, the assessment value, I don't have that information, but the assessment value might not be the same as an appraised value. So
The assessed value is 849,200, I believe, if you combine the two parcels.
That's correct. I looked at it today.
So Ms. Robinson, if I'm hearing you correctly, we can buy it back at the purchase price or is it appraised or assessed value, whichever one is higher?
the assessed value.
So,
The
yes.
assessed value. So we could buy it back at the purchase price or the assessed value, but we have to do it at whatever one is the highest.
That's correct.
And the highest, based off of what staff is telling us, is the assessed value, which is $849,000 roughly. So if we do a breach, we have the option, if their remedy in 30 days is not to our satisfaction, to begin the reversion. And since there are no improvements, our option right now would be to purchase the property back. And that would be based off of the assessment given to us tonight, $849,000 roughly, correct?
I wouldn't agree that it's the assessment that was given to us tonight. It would probably at the time of the transaction, the value would be considered and established at that point. Not
Okay.
tonight.
The assessed value at the time of the transaction.
And that was 849,200.
What was that, Charlie? Mr.
The
James?
assessment in 17 was 849,200.
It's going to be at the time you're repurchasing the property. So
Oh,
whatever,
at the time we repurchased, so, okay. That's in the future, right? Okay, so the assessed value in the future. Okay, so if we do not, so let's say we do a breach, they have a 30-day to cure it, which is to solve it. And it's up to our satisfaction if it's done. Is council the deciding factor what satisfaction is, or is that staff?
if it's the city as a part of this agreement, it should be the city council. But based on recommendations by staff, because we're looking at one factor, the provisions that talk about termination and breach can go to any term in this agreement. And some things council just won't be in the position to make a determination on without a recommendation or relying heavily on the substantive knowledge of its staff. So
Okay.
I guess it will depend on the breach and the issue that is at hand at that moment. But arguably, if the city hasn't provided for it to be, the cure to be determined in a certain manner, based on the fact that the city council had to approve the agreement, the city council will be a part of the determination as to whether or not the breach has been satisfactorily cured.
Okay, so it's my last two questions. So we do a breach tonight on the premise that initial construction did not begin. The developers have 30 days to satisfy that to staff and city council satisfaction, but ultimately city council will be the deciding factor. And if the developer, if we agree that it's been cured, then they can continue with the remaining time that they have to get the buildings in place. If we do not agree that it's to our satisfaction, then the developer can do what?
There is no relief provided to the developer under the agreement. It's just at that point, if the city can come up with the purchase price, there is compliance that can be compelled by virtue of the language. So very few remedies are written into your development agreement for either party, but once the reversionary clause kicks in, there aren't any other remedies that appear to flow naturally from the language in this agreement.
So basically, if we say that we do not feel like it's to our satisfaction, then it's automatically reversion kicks in, correct? Is that what you're saying?
To some extent, yes, and then no, because it's not automatic if we decide we're not going to go through the purchase price. Let's just say that. So we start the process and we don't agree to pay according to the terms that are in the agreement. Let's just say that as the factor that's holding everything up.
Mm-hmm.
There is a duty for the developer to sign and cooperate with us to get all the paperwork signed over so that we can reclaim the property in our name. They would obviously not do that if they didn't get the price that they thought was required by the terms of the agreement. At that point, how the parties respond will be based on whatever strategies their respective attorneys employ at that point in time. I won't speculate as to what they will do, nor will I speculate on the record what the city could do. But
okay, so generally speaking, if we say it's not to our satisfaction, we're leading into a conversation about reversion and buying back the property, but how that lays out is yet to be seen. Is that fair? All right. So basically, at the end of the day, if we do a breach, if we don't agree it's to our satisfaction, we're going to head down that road. So I'm going to end with this before I ask any other questions. Council, if we make this decision, be prepared to figure out amongst ourselves and staff what is to our satisfaction. If they don't have the funding to be able to start building, then clearly it will not be satisfied if having construction started. That's off top. If we say it's not to our satisfaction, then be prepared to have the conversation about buying back the land. It's either or. So it's not like you can do a breach and then say, I mean, it's be prepared to either pay money and have a conversation about paying money at some point in time, or either have a conversation about what it is to satisfaction. And if they can't get the financing to begin breaking ground, which seems to be the issue, then that's a moot point because they're not going to get it. So it goes back to being prepared to pay to buy the land back. And if that's a decision, that's fine. But let's not sit here and just have the public assume that we can just sit here and do a breach. But
Right.
yet, in the road, we're not going to sit here and have a conversation about buying back this property. And that's what it boils down to. So do I agree a breach was done? I do. Because I believe it also means breaking ground. However, does the deals before us outweigh the potential of having to flat out pay back money, which most likely is going to happen? I don't think so. And I'm done for right now.
Thank you. Counselor Denton, you have your hand up.
Yes, I appreciate what Councilor Ford just said. She made it very clear to me, and I can see some of the council are concerned about the taxpayers paying. They will pay, but I would like to ask the assistant city manager, Mr. Bain, when we were talking about the actual start of construction, am I wrong in my interpretation that this is a It doesn't start when you break the ground, dig a footing.
Miss Denton, our opinion has always been, and it's been shared with council in the past, particularly at one time in particular, I remember is on the Cedar Level Road project when council was wondering when that was going to start. Mr. Butler said, make no mistake about it, construction started a long time ago. You have to go through design, you have to go through utility location, you have to go through, and he went through a number of things you have to go through. All that's part of the construction process, and it takes time. They've been going through that over the course of the last year. In fact, just this week, we issued the final site plan approval to them, which takes months and months to accomplish because they have to do stormwater calculations and design. They have to figure out where all the utility connections are going to be. They have to, show where the footprint of the building is. They have to do soil samples to determine that the soil is adequate to build on, or do they need to beef up the soil? They actually have, if you want to get technical, they actually have broken ground out there. They've cleared the kudzu off some of the slopes out there, and they've cleared some trees and all to open up the view shed to the cemetery, some of the scrap trees that were in there. They've been working out there since the week or two after they closed on January 30th. In fact, in very cold weather, Miss Griffin and I met them out there to talk about clearing the trees, and Miss Griffin, as in her responsibility of protecting our environment, she cleared what they could clear and what they could not clear. So they've been working out there. In our opinion, the construction did begin actually a week or two before the construction date. And they've been working steady ever since with all their design and everything else. When Ms. Pelham referenced COVID, the COVID issue was regarding the financing not being finalized. And it was because banks were so busy with the PPE loans and all, they were not talking about development deals. And that's when we mentioned COVID. It wasn't about them not working. They were working all along. So in our opinion, then and still now, is that there hasn't been a breach. And if this is approved tonight and their financing is finalized, then with the site plan in hand, they can actually break ground and start putting silt fencing up and doing all those things within days or weeks of now. So you would actually start seeing stuff coming out of the ground. We have never thought they were in breach, and still don't necessarily agree that they are.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. For these reasons, for Councilor Gore and for Mr. Dean, I cannot support this motion. I do not think it's fair to the taxpayers of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Denton. Councilor Pelham. Councilor Pelham, your mic is muted.
Anyone, I guess our area expert, maybe Mr. Denton can answer this. Is the appraised value normally more than the assessed value of a property?
The appraised value is supposed to be market value. When so
larger.
It depends upon the market. Right now, I would say the appraised value would probably be above the market value would probably be above the assessed value. But a year ago, people would gladly sell their property for what it was assessed for. So It depends upon the market, Council Pelham. It's a variable. So it just depends.
Okay. And Mr. Dane or Mr. Altman, who did the appraisal for the land when we sold it to the Bowmans?
It was a third-party appraisal firm, I believe, out of Tidewater. I don't have their name in front of me, but it was, they were hired, and we jointly agreed to this company to come in and do the appraisal. And they did a, pardon?
Who is we?
The city and the Bowmans agreed jointly as to the company that we would employ. And the company came in and did a fair market appraisal on the property based on what that property would sell for in that current condition, and with the current economic conditions in downtown Hopewell and in the community, which is part of the reason why the market rate issue has been so difficult. And this would hopefully breach that issue.
And that unbiased company knew that the assessed value at that time was $849,000 and 200.
I don't have all their methodology in front of me, Ms. Pelham, but any
said that
appraisal company is going to start with the tax forms on the property and look at the current assessed values. That's where they're going to start, but they're also going to look at comparable sales and determine what property is selling for and what the per acre price would be, and that's what they establish.
Yeah, so I'm saying there's no property around here that looks like Patrick Copeland area. But someone said earlier that that property was valued at $849,000. And now, but they got an appraisal price, market rate value back in what month? In 2018? Did they do it? You remember what date we did it?
I don't know the date. I would have to
Approximate.
look, Ms. Pelham. I don't have that in front of me, but yes, sometime back in that area.
Was it a year ago?
It was 17 or 18. I'm not sure exactly when.
It probably would have been, I mean, I would assume, Ms. Pelham, that would have been sometime in 18, because that's when we did approved the development agreement and sale. So I would assume it would have been close to that time.
September, the same day we talked about earlier. Was September 18 or before that, or after September 18th when we read a letter we read in closed session? Was it before September or after September?
I don't know off the top of my head. I would imagine it would have been sometime, close to when we finalized the development agreement and the sale of the property, for it to be as close to market as possible.
So it's September, let's say September 2018.
Yeah.
1920, 2.5 years later. Now the assessed values remains the same, but the company appraised it at 391. Does not seem reasonable to me.
Ms. Pelham, the appraised value was discussed with the purchase contract when council approved the purchase contract, whatever month that was. I believe it was November of 17, and it was discussed then. It was unanimously approved by council, the purchase price.
Okay, but how did we know it was assessed at 849?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Because that question was asked.
But I'm saying I didn't appraise it. The company said the market rate, it could only sell for $391.
Yes, ma'am. $391,000.
Okay, well, that to me needs to be investigated against that company to value at that price to sell it for us to a company that's going to bill for us. And now the assessed value is 849, which they will be getting a significant improvement if we end up buying it, purchasing it back from them. So if we do that, I just think the council, another option that the council can do is investigate the company that gave us the appraised value at that time. The other issue is that what no one's talked about, if assessments go down and our economy go to the left again with this development agreement. We're talking about all the numbers that were shown earlier were kept going down, but yet supposed the assessments themselves go down. What would that do for the taxpayer in Hopewell? I think it's also significant that for this development agreement, we've been talking about the fact that Francisco Landing, or what's the initial name of the company? Is it Francisco Landing, right? Holding.
I have a point of order, and I don't mind it, but if we're going to open up the comments to development deal and all this other stuff, then we can all do that.
No, it's not talking about.
I think the mayor has to answer that question, not sidebar from any other council. She has a point of order. The point of order goes to the chair. I would like to hear from the chair.
So the point of order is that we're opening up the development agreement. However, there's questions that are asked so that a counselor can make an informed decision. This is a point of information that a counselor is asking. Counselor Pelham, I'm going to ask you to not make assumptions or accusations and ask the questions to a point of information or a point of to help you make an informed decision this evening.
For me to help make an informed decision, point of information is the fact that the initial company we made the development agreement with, whatever the name was, Francisco Holding Landing, we had to make the difficult decision to take in the fact that this company had to give two additional to establish two different LLCs for different agreements to make this agreement whole again, to make it so that they can make a loan, get money to make a loan to build this property.
Ms. Pelham, Counselor Pelham.
A point of information is, how do we know the company is stable?
That's the point of information I was asking. If we're doing this about the breach, I don't mind the conversation. I was trying to have the conversation the whole time. But if one order is given to me earlier about commenting on the breach,
Yep.
this is not about the breach.
Right.
Thank you, Mayor Junior.
Counselor Pelham, please.
I understand, Madam Mayor. Okay, so I will pass that. I'll wait till it comes again, whatever. Improvements to the property. So again, for the breach on the contract, it's very difficult to understand that they didn't breach if you just approve the site plan. If you know that you know as a company that you have to build a house, start building something on February the 8th, you don't get the site plan to the people that have to help you build the property 2 years later, or whenever they.
Ms. Pelham, Counselor Pelham, I understand this is your opinion. However, we need to stick to
This is a breach. I'm talking about the fact that they got a site plan a year later to start on construction of the project. How is that not related to the breach? They had to have a site plan before they start construction, and they didn't have a site plan. So
Madam Mayor, may I
eat-
answer
how-
that? Madam Mayor, may I answer that?
yes. Mr.
Ms. Pelham, they didn't even own the land until January 30th, 29 days before construction was to begin. Part of construction, in their view and our view, is the soil science, the design, the architectural, the engineering, the stormwater. All that did begin. They would never have signed an agreement on the 30th expecting to come out of the ground when we had to do a site plan approval and building plans, because that would physically never happen. It takes months for us to get to a site plan process. So that in itself would never have happened by February 28th. And so they began work immediately, and that's our position.
And who is our?
The city's position.
In the city, meaning you and who else?
The city staff. Mr. Altman, Ms. Griffin, everybody has agreed that they have been steadily working on this. Ms. Griffin and I met them out there when they were actually troweling and digging trees up and clearing kudzu in February last year.
I concluded it's not construction, and we have to get construction defined by the courts. That's what we have to do, but I don't agree with it. The end.
I don't see any other hands raised. Counselor Holloway, I know you're on the line. Do you have any comment?
I would like to come and explain to the public the role that the EDA is playing in this agreement.
Mr. Dane, would you like to answer that?
I'd be happy to, Ms. Holloway and Madam Mayor. Yes, the EDAs are established to help with economic deals because local governments are restricted by state law on what they can and can't do. And local government can't just hand out money to a rebate or an incentive or a grant or anything to an individual or a company. They're just not allowed to do that. So EDAs are used to funnel these grants and incentive programs and so forth out into the public for those economic development deals. And that's the purpose here. They're only involved in that after we receive, as I was described earlier, after we receive the donation, then all the taxes, we would give the EDA just the tax amount, not the donation, and they would write a check back to the developer so that they got back their taxes, but we kept the donation, which was equivalent to, from year 13 on, which was equivalent to the tax in the first place.
So where does the money come from for the EDA?
It comes from the developer paying us, not from city coffers. None of this comes from existing fund balances or anything. It's money they paid us that we are rebating back, but they're paying us twice. Starting year 13 through 35, they're paying us twice what the amount they're going to get rebated.
What would they have to do with the breach about with them paying us? That's the development agreement, isn't it?
Councilor Pelham, Councilor Holloway has the floor.
I said point of order.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Are you asking me for the point of order, or are you asking for a point of information?
Order for Charlie talking about the development agreement and not the breach.
I answered the question Ms. Holloway asked, Ms. Pelham.
That you going into the development agreement.
Sorry, Ms. Pelham.
No, I'm not criticizing. I'm just asking a question. Is that that's what they told me. I was talking about the development agreement. He particularly talking about the development agreement.
Councilor.
No, actually, I was talking about the donation agreement, rebate agreement.
EPA does
Okay,
get,
so the discussion right now is going a little all over the place. Let's keep it streamlined. We're all, let's be kind and considerate of each other and speak, please.
Thank you, Mr. Dane.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Holloway, you're welcome.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
I got my hand up too.
Councilor Gore, then Councilor Randolph.
In terms of the breach, and I don't know if I could be able to, I'll ask staff this question, and then if members of council want to chime in, that's fine. If we were to go the route of the breach, the developer has 30 days to cure the breach. And from the motion that I heard, it would be for not starting initial construction. And based off of what was described, that interpretation is breaking ground. So the breach is made for the developer not breaking ground. They have 30 days to solve the problem. My question to staff, and then also the counselors that want to move forward with this, although I do agree with the interpretation, my question would be for staff, what would you guys consider to be a cure?
Well, I mean, I think the Bowman firm would be on site within days, setting up silt fencing, starting to set construction fencing, preparing for the building coming out of the ground, and probably start moving dirt, start scraping and doing some things. It would be cured easily in 30 days, as long as the agreement's approved tonight for the construction. If they don't get the financing piece tonight, then they have to, I don't know if they got other financing lined up, but they would rotate to something that is not high end like this. And it could be like Mr. Altman said, it could be a HUD funded project. And they may already be in the process of talking to HUD, I don't know. But they could still start construction, start moving dirt and continue to make progress and still meet the intent of the regulation, I think, or the agreement, and come out of ground, in a month or two with the building rather than in a few weeks,
Yes. And my second question is, since we're talking about two different agreements, in terms of the breach, if a breach is issued, does that impact council's ability to make a determination on the donation and rebate agreement?
Are you asking staff, Ms. Gore?
Yes, that could be Ms. Robinson, you, or Mr. Altman.
Well, I think you could still make the agreement with them so they can finalize the financing, and that's just going to speed them along. But they can cure the breach by starting to, level land and start moving dirt around. But yes, I think they're mutually exclusive. That you could do these and still do a breach, but it doesn't make sense if you're going to go ahead with the project. It doesn't make sense to call breach when they're going to be out there in a couple of weeks starting to move dirt if you just approve the project.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Randolph?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I've been in banking and finance for 40 years, and I will say again, it doesn't matter what we think construction means. If the contract did not define what construction meant, then it may be that we call a breach because they didn't start construction to our liking, and they decide they take us to court to fight over what construction means, because they don't want that to be on them as well in a breach, as well as anything else that might damage their reputation. Again, I think it's a slippery slope of what defines it and what doesn't, and there was no definition. If it were a normal construction commercial deal, the bank certainly understands that they're not going to break ground right away because of all the legwork that has to be done to prepare and to get permits and things of that nature. So that's why they were given the length of time they were, for not just the build, but all the other stuff. And I think that personally, we having opinions on it doesn't matter, because if their opinion differs from ours and there was no definition, the only and we're gonna call them in breach to potentially take the land back, they're liable to take us to court before we even get that far. So I'm not in favor of calling for a breach. We've spent 7 or 8 hours on this in the last 2 weeks. It's an important aspect. I thought we had cleared most of the way for this to go, and so a breach for me is not something I'm going to vote on, but I'm certainly getting closer to wanting to vote for everything else and potentially calling for the vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Point of order about the motion, Madam Chair.
Yes.
After we vote on this, I can't remember if this was a substitute or not, but after we vote on this, do we get to vote on the motion regarding the motion that's also on the floor, or does this cancel out everything where we're at right now?
This is a substitute motion.
So that cancels out the other vote, correct, Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
I couldn't hear. Did she say something?
I didn't hear her.
She did not, I don't think.
The chair answered the question as far as I heard. Is that correct, Mayor Bennett?
Say again.
Did you answer the question when you said yes?
Yes, this is a substitute motion, so it canceled out the motion prior. However, if this fails, we revert back to the first motion that Councilor Denton proposed.
Okay. So it's a substitute motion, and if this passes, then we're done. We don't go back to the other motion.
No, ma'am.
All right.
But another motion could still be made, right?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
So I don't see any more hands. I'm just going to state I'm a little disappointed in the development agreement, and I'm just going to state that right now, because there There's some things that I feel that would have protected us as a city. We talk about when a development agreement is agreed upon by both parties, which would be the contractor, the developer, and the city, there is an understanding. There's an understanding that they're ready to go ahead and move forward and break the ground. Now, if we're talking about, I've looked and seen where the city has done, we have given amendments to push the start date forward, right? The purchase date. When we look at the soil, you're not going to purchase a piece of land unless you know you can build on it. Okay, that's just me. That's me. That's my personal opinion. However, this is why I'm not going to be I am in favor of asking for a breach, and I'm not in favor of this agreement tonight. Now, the risk versus the reward. Now, the risk was selling the property for the assessed value at the time for prime real estate for $346,000. And this is in 2018. When that agreement was signed in 2018, it was under the impression that we were going to have things in the ground and we would have the first phase done. We are now in 2021. So my concern is, what is the risk versus the reward? This is a 35-year tax abatement. It's a red flag to me if someone tells me that they're going to pay us double taxes. That's just words to me. I would never pay anyone double taxes anywhere because that's just not something I would do. I'm sorry, I'm not in favor of approving the tax abatement this evening. And I am in favor of asking for a notice of breach. I don't see any other hands. Roll call, Ms. Bess. And can you please restate the motion prior to us voting?
Are we talking about the motion that Denton made? Or
No,
the motion to ask city attorney to issue a breach of contract?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Motion to ask city attorney to issue a breach of contract. Vice Mayor Pardon.
Yes.
Councilor Gore.
Yes.
Councilor Denton.
No.
Councilor Pallam.
Yes.
Mayor Bennett.
Yes.
Councilor Randolph.
No.
Councilor Holloway.
Yes.
Mayor Bennett, you have 5 yes and 2 no. The motion passes.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Does anyone else want to make a motion at this time?
I do.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, seconded by Mayor Bennett. Roll call.
Vice Mayor Pardon.
Yes.
Councilor Gore.
No.
Councilor Denton.
Yes.
Councilor Pallam. Councilor Pallam.
No.
Mayor Bennett. Mayor Bennett.
No.
Councilor Randolph.
Yes.
Councilor Holloway.
Yes.
Mayor Bennett, you have 4 yes and 3 no. The motion passes.